6 months ago, I opened up the very first location of Clipperhands Barbershop. And today, I'm gonna show you guys around and break down item by item, cost by cost, how much it took to get this from the ground to where it is now, from a thought to a reality. So let's get into it. When I first expressed interest in opening a barbershop, I definitely underestimated how difficult it would be to find a good space, right? So when I thought about it, what did I do? I went to Google, I started looking at commercial listings that were available, and I went and started touring some of them, talking with the realtors. I ended up going on 3 tours. I called 5 different places, and none of them worked out for various different reasons. Either it was too expensive, wrong location, or too much work needed to be done. But that was until I found this location. So we are in North Olmsted, Ohio, off of a very busy road called Lorraine Road. About a mile away, there is a Walmart and a mall. And there's just a lot of commotion out here, so it made sense. So I hit up the realtor that was over this space, and I said, hey man, I'm interested in this space. We went over the numbers and started negotiating, right? So we agreed to terms. It was time to sign the lease. Now, at the time of signing the lease, you're gonna spend money, right? So I had to give up first month's rent and security deposit, which came up to $5,371 right away, right before we even get started with the build out. So after I spent that $5,000, it was time to get started. I got the keys and I went inside. So let's go inside. So when I came into this space, it didn't look anything like this. It was previously a Dreclipperhands. There was carpet, there was tile, and they only had about 6 stations. But I had a vision and I knew what I wanted it to look like, right? And I thought I could just get started. But this is my first time doing it. So I came to realize that I needed licenses and I needed permits just to even tear a podium wall down, add an outlet, add plumbing for the Shampoo Bowl. And that was a bummer, right? So that costed me anywhere from about $500 to $800 right away. So boom, we spent the $5,700. We got the $500 to $1,000 just to get started, right, without tearing anything down. But I didn't know how to do any of this, so I needed to hire somebody, right? And that's when I started asking around for contractors or people to help me in the process. So I hired a contractor. And the contractor costed about $31,500, okay? Now, that was scary coming from someone who's never made that big of an investment. But I trusted him. I know people that worked with him and we got to work, right? But one thing I would encourage you, if you're getting in the process to open a barbershop or just working with a contractor in general, is install a payment plan, right? You don't want to just give up the entire amount of money at once, because I've heard horror stories of people giving it all at once and they either don't finish the job or take really long at it, right? So I gave an initial payment of like $2,000. Then about halfway through the project, we did about $15,000. And then at the end, I gave them the rest, right? Now, when the contractor came into the space, he wasn't able to get ready right away either because the city required blueprints. Now, if you've done this before, you know blueprints are expensive. And the blueprints for this space costed me about $2,500 because me personally, I don't know how to draw blueprints, right? I just knew of the idea I had in my head, and I wanted to do it. So the contractor got me in contact with an architect, and we came in here and I laid out like, man, I want to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stations on this side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 stations on that side, right? So I gave him the basics, and then he knew what to do when it came to labeling the outlets and where the lighting's gonna go and all that type of stuff. So now we have our blueprints, right? And now, even before we break any ground, we are at $11,056, and we have done nothing to the space. But now that we got the green light and it's time to get to work, I have to order the stuff for the space. So the first thing on my mind was I needed to order stations and I needed to order chairs. So I hopped on Google, looked at reference pictures and stuff I wanted to get. And thankfully, I have a good network that plugged me in with a company called Mr. B Barber Supply in New York, I believe. And I got these Pips chairs, as you can see, and I got these Pip stations, and I got them for about $14,721.60. That is for 10 chairs, 10 stations with the mirrors, okay? And then what I also needed was a shampoo bowl. So for this shampoo bowl right here, which is a standard shampoo bowl, it was $1,299, okay? That is for the stations, mirrors, chairs, shampoo bowl. And now we have to have somewhere for clients to sit, right? So that's when it came into the waiting chairs. Now what I knew I didn't want to do is get regular waiting chairs. I wanted something more aesthetic. So I went in Wayfair and found these waiting stations, which I think are really clean. Not the most comfortable, right? But they came out for two of them to $1,055.73. So now we have all the stuff that goes into furnishing the space, but we haven't started the demo. We haven't started the build out. So I can't bring those things in. And I didn't think about that. I just wanted to make sure I got this stuff in time. So I had to get a storage unit, all right? And storage units for the size to fit all of the stuff was about $233.50 a month. Now I had to have that for 3 months, all right? And still haven't broke ground. I bought all the stuff. I got all the permits. I got all the blueprints. I got all of the furnishing, but I needed somewhere to put it. So I got the storage unit and we held it there for 3 months. So now it was time for the contractor to do his thing, right? So when I first came into this space, like I said, there was carpet going from here to the door. This was where Great Clips had their waiting area. And then right over here by the front door, there was a podium that separated the stations on this wall. I wanted more of like an open concept. So I said, hey, can you get rid of this? Can you get rid of the carpet? Rip all the floor up. And then there was a pole here, as well as if you look up at the ceiling, it's busted open. But when they were here, it was regular like drop ceiling. And I didn't want that. Again, I wanted more concept, more grand feel. So I told him those details. I told him the paint color, the trim and all that type of stuff. And he went to work. He got it right. And that took about 2 months to do that part of it. And he did a great job. As you can see, we went with white, we went with black trim, as well as black trim around the doors as well. Now, the most exciting part for me that I was looking forward to was the flooring. And the reason was, as you can see, we went with epoxy, but we couldn't do the flooring until we did everything above the flooring, right? Because if you did the flooring first, then all the debris, the paint and everything would ruin it. So now that we did all that other stuff, it was time to get to the floor, okay? Now, with epoxy flooring, it is very expensive, right? But I assume because it was a Great Clips here and everything, that the floor, once we ripped it up, was good to go. But like I said, they had carpet and all that type of stuff. So there was glue, there was a lot of imperfections on the concrete, and there was a lot of prep work that needed to be done before they pour the epoxy, because it needs to be as perfect as they can before they pour it, so it can distribute nicely and last, okay? Now with that, the flooring took about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And at the end of that 2 weeks, you wanna know how much I had to give them? The epoxy flooring costed me about $17,382. Yes, I know, it hurt my heart too, okay? But I have a cool trick that I'm gonna share with you at the end of this video if you stick to the end. And this is thanks to my network of people that showed me how to finesse it in a way. So if you stuck around in this video so far, I appreciate you. But if you're thinking, man, Dre's not even done, and this seems like it's a lot more out of my budget than I thought, right? A big part of, I like good money behind the chair, but a big part of why I was able to do this so quickly is because I leveraged content, right? So if you are interested in leveraging your platform to monetize it and get clients, but more specifically, add another stream of income, I have the solution. I dropped an ebook called the Content to Clients and Clash Blueprint about my content strategy, where I share with you how I've been able to monetize my platform and go ahead and add another income stream, which helped me get this, all right? So go to the link in my description and get yours today. Now, one thing I forgot to mention was the lighting. As you can see, go ahead and point up. We got the hexagon lighting, which is super dope. I like it. I know it's really common in barbershops now, and I was kind of following a trend But that's besides the point. Everybody loves it. It's not common out here in Ohio. So I got that. Now each panel was about 200. It was like 230 bucks, and I got 3 of them. So that was anywhere from about $600 to $700 for the lighting. Contractor installed them, so plus on that one. And now that we have this beautiful flooring, we have the walls done, we have the ceiling, we have the lights. Now it's time to bring all that furniture that I talked about we stored at the storage unit back into the barbershop. So now it's time to set up the station, set up the chairs, and get it looking nice, get it looking pretty, right? But now comes the little detailed expenses that you don't always account for. So with those little details, I didn't really need this, but I really wanted it, was TVs. I got 2 TVs from Best Buy. Those were about $200 to $250 each. So that's about $500 on TVs. And then if you come over here, I needed something for barbers to book their appointments through. Right now, I called around, I asked different barbers' opinions in the community I'm attached to on what they preferred for booking software, right? And that's when I came to Mango Mint. Now, Mango Mint is a monthly recurring service, but to get started, I still have to pay it, right? So that was about $237. Then obviously, that's a month per location, by the way. It's a beautiful software, but it is pretty expensive. They sent me an iPad, you know, a tap to pay system. So that was another expense. And then we also needed to set the vibes, the mood into place with some music. So I went ahead and got the Sonos speaker. Now the Sonos speaker was about 549 bucks, but I have a client who works for the company. This is why I always say leverage your friendships, leverage the people you've been able to network with. He gave me a discount code. I got it for about $450, saved some change somewhere after spending all this money. And then we're gonna go to the break room. The break room wasn't that expensive, but let's go ahead and head back there. So for the break room, there wasn't much that needed to be done because these washers and dryers over here were in the apartment that I moved out of, right? So when I moved into our new home, I just brought these over here. So essentially it was free. And then I bought this chair, and then 2 of these waiting chairs was already in my studio when I was there by myself. So I just brought those over. Total, we spent about 80 bucks with a couple chairs and the table. Not too bad. Now, one thing I suggest if you don't have all the money up front, is buy stuff little by little, right? If your goal is to open up a 10-chair shop, maybe open up with 3 at first and then add stations little by little. But an expense that I didn't account for when I opened this was extra storage. Because as you can see, these stations are actually pretty small, right? So we needed a little extra storage. So I went ahead and bought these shelves. Now we have 10 stations, and I wanted each station to have 2 of those shelves. So those shelves were about $256.40, which is not too bad in comparison to the other stuff, right? Now, one thing also, that is an expense you really won't account for, is a barber pole, okay? So a mistake that I would have made, and thankfully I had someone look out for me, Jay Majors, the founder of the CT Barber Expo. He said, Dre, when you get a barber pole, don't be cheap, all right? Because barber poles can either be really cheap or really expensive. And what a lot of barbers do is they buy barber poles on Amazon for 100, 200 bucks. But he's heard stories of people, like 3 or 4 stories, where they actually catch on fire and burn a whole plaza or burn the whole building down. So he said, you're already spending all this money, you might as well invest in a good barber pole, right? And if you didn't know, barber poles can be pretty pricey. Now this is a very small one, right? And this barber pole alone was $673 for this little one, and they get huge, right? But I took the advice. I don't want my barbershop to burn down. I don't want to pay for this whole plaza, so I invested in a good barber pole as well. Now, I told you I was going to share a little nugget that someone taught me when it came to this flooring, right? So there is something called tenant allowance when you sign a lease on a commercial space that some landlords offer, right? And tenant allowance is an amount of money that the owner of a property will give you if you do something to the space that can stay once you leave, right? And improves the space. And epoxy flooring, if I was to leave this place, is gonna stay here, right? So I could ask for tenant allowance to go towards the floor. So they approved me for $12,000 worth of tenant allowance. But the thing is, you have to initially spend that $17K that I told you on the floor in order to get that $12,000 check back at the end, because you have to finish build out, right? So that's a cool little trick that if you want to save some money on build out, ask the property owner if they'll offer you tenant allowance. So that allowed me to get $12,000 back. So essentially for this floor, I paid $5,000. So the last expense that I'm gonna tell you guys about today, because there's a lot of little details that I'm gonna miss in the process of opening a barbershop, like trash cans, toilet paper, all that type of stuff. But the last final expense that is huge is signage. So let's go ahead and go outside. So one of the second most biggest expenses outside of the flooring and contractor is signage, okay? As you can see, I went with custom signage with the name of the barbershop under it. What I wanted to do to save money is just put barbershop up there. But I thought to myself, I really want to brand this because I want to focus on expanding it, right? But that's when I talked to the sign company and said, you know, I wanted to say Clipperhands Barbershop, but Clipperhands is a lot of letters, barbershop is a lot of letters, so it costed a lot of money, okay? So the signage you see up top was about $8,000 to $8,500 for the signage, okay? And I definitely underestimated signage. I thought it was gonna be about a couple thousand, but it was $8,000. So now that we spoke about signage, let's go back inside and tally all the expenses up so I can tell you how much it really was altogether. So total, after all the expenses, the license and permits, the contractors, the lighting, the flooring, the signage, and all the little details, it took about $72,506 to get this off the ground, all right? And the honest answer, was I scared? Absolutely. Right? But sometimes in order to reap the benefits of a decision, you have to make an investment, right? And people invest in a lot of different things. People buy $70,000 cars that ain't gonna make them any money. People spend $70,000 in sports betting or gambling and lose money, right? But I knew, because I did the numbers and I did it the right way, that in order to make the money I wanna make, that $70,000 had to be spent, right? It's an investment. But was I scared? Absolutely. So my goal with this video was to give you an expectation of what it costs to open a barbershop that looks like this, right? Obviously, there's shortcuts you can do if this isn't the exact aesthetic that you want in order to lower that price. But if you want a barbershop that looks similar to this, or, you know, quote unquote the same caliber, that is about the amount of money that I spent. So hopefully this gives you a realistic expectation. So that way you can do what you need to do to put yourself in a position to do this, all right? But if you wanted to know the honest truth about opening a barbershop, go ahead and check out this YouTube video right here, where I share with you how I felt about 3 months in. Now we've been open for about 6 months, and I'm super happy with where we're at and the potential for this growth. And I'm excited to see where the Clipperhands brand continues to grow. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.